there's a very tiny group of people who call to abolish the police. That is not an actual movement. And the call to defund the police might sound like a very simplistic way of handling this, and I get it. And it's also vulnerable to misinterpretation and all of that. But when you consider the fact that defunding the police would just simply take some of the funding that the police departments have been given throughout the years and divert some of that funding to actual social services that are supposed to be handling certain issues within the community, then it makes a lot of sense. So for instance, cops are asked to do all sorts of things that they're just not experts in carrying out. They are not mental health professionals. Clearly, they're not mental health professionals. So instead of funding mental health in our communities, we're increasing the budgets for local cops. And it doesn't make any sense, right? We criminalize behavior that should not be criminalized. We should be diverting that money to creating social programs that help solve the issues we're seeing in our communities, like homelessness. In our community, Cenk, I'm sure you've seen it. I've experienced it firsthand. You see homeless people out on the street, and what happens? People living in those neighborhoods don't like it. They call the cops come in, and they start issuing citations and criminalizing being homeless, being poor. That doesn't make sense. Instead of funding the cops to take care of that, why don't we use that money to do something about affordable housing in our communities? So it's a complex issue. I get that the rallying cry comes across as overly simplistic, but my issue is, for all the naysayers, they're going to have an issue with whatever the rallying cry is. They have no interest in actual, like if the rallying cry was simply reform the police, you don't think that conservatives would still have some sort of problem with it? Of course they would. And this is a complex issue that you're trying to get the message across for. So what should the message be? What would be the accurate message that would not be purposely misinterpreted by dishonest actors?
Look, Anna, there's a couple of things there. First of all, yes, I agree with you. The right wing, and including centrist Democrats, including Joe Biden, would push back on any message. But we don't have to make it easy for them. And that's what we're doing when we say defund the police. It'll immediately gut check folks that are regular voters and not knee deep in activist politics. Immediately go, what do you mean? Does that mean I'm going to be unsafe and there's going to be no cops? I'm out. Look, I'll guarantee it to you right here. Look, I'm curious. The reason I want to do the poll is because I want to get a sense of what you guys think. You're progressive, and your opinion doesn't always match mine, obviously, right? And Anna and I often disagree. But every political instinct I have says that this will poll disastrously. Now, why does that matter? Because if you don't win elections, you can't actually get the goddamn change. So if we want to feel good about chanting things at a protest, great, chant defund the police. If you don't lose 80% of voters, go for it. But I think it's a terrible idea. That's my opinion. Look, we got the video of Jacob Frey getting booed out of the Minneapolis thing. I mean, look at it. Look at it. You tell me if they don't mean abolition of police, they have a funny way of showing it.
Jacob Frey, we have a yes or no question for you. Yes or no, will you commit to defunding Minneapolis Police Department?
Abolition of it?
What did I say? We don't want no more police. Is that clear? We don't want people with guns toting around in our community, shooting us down. You have an answer? It is a yes or a no. It is a yes or a no. Will you defund the Minneapolis Police Department?
Loud and clear.
Louder.
I do not support full abolition. All right. Lie. You're wasting our time. Get out of here. Get out. Go home, Jacob. Go home. 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 Shame.
I'll tell you right now, that video is an absolute disaster. You want to win elections so we can get change, so we can actually change the police, so we can defund a third, 50%, 2/3, depending on the context of the police, to get it to the right agencies that should be working with people, including the homeless. You got to win elections. If you tell people we're going to totally abolish police, you'll never win another election in the entire country. I don't care if it's in the most Vermont area in the world, in the country. You won't win an election. That's crazy. That is the most damaging video I've ever seen for the progressive movement. Those people do not speak for the majority of progressives.
And look, there are variations depending on which city you're in, because this is a complex issue that impacts cities in different ways. So what the community in Minneapolis would like to see with the police department is probably very different from what the communities in other areas of this country want, right? So in that particular video, you have protesters, yes, who called for the abolition of the police department. Got it. But what I'm seeing, and I think that most people can agree with this, is a call to divert some of the budget that's directed toward police departments, towards social services that make sense. To give you a statistic that should blow your mind, because it blew my mind, and I tweeted the report about this written by David Sirota. The Urban Institute did a study that looked into population growth between 1977 and 2017. The population in the United States grew by 50%, but the police budget for local police departments grew by 173%. These are bloated budgets. And we are doing this to the detriment of social programs that need to be funded, that have been severely defunded throughout the decades. Okay, so when you have coronavirus completely ravaging the finances of municipalities throughout this country, and you see an increase in the budget for the local police department while everything else gets cut, including education, you got to ask yourselves, like, is this really what the priority needs to be right now? Because I'll tell you something, when people don't have opportunities, what do you think happens? Lack of opportunities has a strong correlation to an uptick in violence and crime. People are desperate. And I just think that the priorities have been wrong. So I don't want to generalize and pretend as though every protester out there is on the same page and wants the same thing. That's just not the case.
Yeah, look, I don't know you could find anyone in this country for the last decade that has been as loud as I have been, and we have to change police culture completely. It's all wrong. They're told to do overwhelming violence. They have a giant budget that is totally not proportional to the needs of the communities. But if you go and tell any community in Minneapolis, any race, any income group, it doesn't matter. Should we abolish police altogether? They're going to say no, and they're going to say no in overwhelming numbers. So those 20 activists there that are chanting against the mayor, they do not represent any so-called community other than hard left progressive activists. And if you're in that community, I love you, brothers and sisters, and maybe you're doing a great job in pushing the Overton window, and that's why some people might vote that, hey, it is good framing. Because it pushes the conversation so far in one direction. And then maybe we settle in the middle. That's an interesting strategy. But if you actually believe you're going to get Americans to abolish police, that's not, you live on a different planet, not this one.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.